everyone, and we are here for the third part of the video for the French Revolution, chapter 1 of Standard 9 CBSE. Now, as we discussed earlier, I had told you that 14th of July 1789 was a day when the French people revolted against the King of France, right? But that was not the only time that there was a revolution in France. There had been previous revolutions too, right? But none was so effective. Now, peasants and other artisans, they had been having some minor revolutions here and there again and again, but they did not have the skills to have a proper organized revolution, and so they had never been successful. Now, this task of organizing a protest in a proper manner was left to the middle class. Now, in 18th century France, there was seen the emergence of a new social group called the middle class, which was a new educated social group within the middle class, within the third estate itself. These were the more prosperous businessmen, the people who exported goods outside and created wealth, or people who had professionals like lawyers and doctors. These kind of people who had become more prosperous, okay? And all of these who belonged to the middle class, which was within the third estate, were people who were educated. So they were aware of various social ideas that were prevalent at that time, which are upcoming at that time. Okay, now one of the ideas was that privilege should not be acquired by birth. That means a person, if he is born in a family of nobility, for example, he acquires some privileges by birth. That was something that they did not like. They believed that privilege should be acquired through hard work and by earning it. Okay, you should be privileged if you have worked hard for it. Another thing they wanted was even social position should not be acquired by birth, right? You become a lord or some high ranking officer just because you are born in a noble family. Even that is what they protested against. They wished that social position should also be earned through merit. That means through hard work. Okay, you need to earn the social position too. So privileges and social position should be through merit, not something acquired by birth. Now, these ideas led to a vision for a society that stood for freedom, equal laws and opportunities for all, not just for the privileged people like those who are in the first and the second estate, the clergy and the nobility. They wish that if people from the third estate, they work hard enough, and if they are talented enough, capable enough, they should be able to get the privileges too. Okay. Now, these ideas at that time were becoming famous because of some philosophers who had given these ideas. Some books were written, some philosophers had put across their ideas, and these things were discussed among the middle class in various clubs, in coffee houses, etc. So even not only were the middle class people aware of it, but people who attended for example, a coffee house, if somebody had gathered over there who was not really educated like the people of the middle class, they would also hear these discussions, and so these ideas had become popular in France at that time. Now, some of the philosophers like John Locke, Jean-Jacques Rousseau and Montesquieu were prominent at that time. Now, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, he had written The Social Contract, a book called The Social Contract, in which he said that the government should be based on a social contract between the people and its representatives. This is an idea of democracy, basically. Okay, so this was put forth by Jean-Jacques Rousseau in his book at that time. Another philosopher was John Locke, and he had written a book called The Two Treatises of Government. In this book, he has proved that monarchy was a flawed system. That means the system of monarchy, a government in monarchy where the king is supreme and he is divine, and what the king says is the final thing. This system was flawed. It was full of mistakes. Okay. Another third and important philosopher that we are going to talk about is Montesquieu. He wrote the book called The Spirit of the Laws, and in this he suggested that the power should be divided among the three branches of the government, that is the judiciary, the legislative and the executive. It should not be just for one person, and that is for the king. Okay, now coming to the question as to how the king imposed further taxes upon the people. Now you are aware, as we discussed previously, that when Louis XVI came to the throne, when he ascended the throne, he found the treasury to be empty. Okay, so what was the thing to be done? The thing to be done was to increase the taxes. But in those days it was the law that the king cannot himself, just by his own will, increase the taxes. The system was that a meeting needed to be called for all the three of the estates, the first estate, the third estate and the second estate. So this was the system. So Louis XVI, on 5th of May 1789, he called for a estate general meeting. Okay, previously the last time the meeting was held, it was in 1614. Okay, so this time he called for it on 5th of May 1789 in the Palace of Versailles. This meeting was attended by 300 members of the clergy, 300 members of the nobility, that is the second estate, and 600 members of the third estate. The third estate included all the common people. Okay, but the thing over here is, among the 600 people who had attended for the general estates meeting from the third estate, some categories of the third estate were completely not allowed to enter the general estates meeting. Okay, those people were women, artisans and peasants or farmers. These three kind of people were not allowed to come for the meeting. Now what happened at this meeting? The people of the third estate, that means the 600 representatives of the third estate, they were already aware of what the situation was going on in France. They were already aware that the first estate and the second estate, they do not need to pay taxes. So evidently there would be a proposal to increase taxes and all the burden would fall upon them. So they had come prepared with some 40,000 letters written with their pleas, with their appeal. Okay, and they put forth a new proposal this time. Now traditionally voting was done in the manner where each estate, that means first estate, second estate and third estate, each estate would have one vote, right? So one vote for the first estate, one vote for the second estate and one vote for the third estate. Each estate was considered as one vote combined. Okay, now the third estate this time put a proposal that let it not be one estate, one vote, let it be one member, one vote. Then what would happen? It would be 300 of the first estate, that is the clergy, 300 members of the second estate, that is the nobility, and 600 members of the third estate, that means the common people. This proposal was put forward where one member, one vote. But of course Louis XVI declined this proposal, and when he declined this, what did the members of the third estate do? They walked out of the estate general meeting as a protest. Okay, then afterwards on 20th June 1789, the representatives of the third estate, they gathered at an indoor tennis club in Versailles. And they decided that until they draft a constitution that would limit the powers of the king, until they draft such a constitution for the country of France, they would not disperse as an assembly. Okay, so in this they were supported mostly, they were led actually by two people. One of them was Mirabeau and the other one was Abbé Sieyès. Now Mirabeau, he belonged himself to the second estate. He was a person, he was a nobleman actually, but he did not believe, he did not support the idea of privilege by birth. Same way Abbé Sieyès, he belonged to the first group of, to the first estate. He himself had been a priest. Okay, and he also did not support the same thing, that privilege by birth should be there. Okay, so we take a recap of what we have studied today. So as you can see here, the 18th century, it saw the emergence of a new educated social group, that is the middle class. They were having ideas like no privilege should be there by birth, and social position should be based on merit, not through birth. They envisaged, they thought of a society that should be based on the ideas of freedom, equal laws and opportunities for all. These ideas were brought forth by prominent philosophers of the day. Philosophers like John Locke. He wrote the book called Two Treatises of Government, in which he said that the system of monarchy was flawed, it was full of mistakes. Another one is Jean-Jacques Rousseau. He wrote the book called The Social Contract, in which he said that the government should be based on a social contract between the people and its representatives. And the third important philosopher is Montesquieu. He wrote The Spirit of the Laws, and in that he suggested that power should be divided among the three branches of government, that is the legislative, the executive and the judiciary. Then an Estate General meeting was called upon by Louis XVI. Okay, as you can see that 5th May 1789, the meeting for Estate General was called. It was called in the Palace of Versailles, and the last time this meeting was held was in 1614. The meeting was held between the three estates representatives. Each estate, the first estate had 300 members, the second estate had 300 representative members, and the third estate, it had 600 representative members. But entry was banned for peasants, that means farmers, artisans and for women. In those days, voting was traditionally conducted in the manner where one estate was one vote. So there was a counting between 3 votes generally. Okay, but the third estate, they had a new proposal where they said that there should be 1 member, 1 vote. And the king declined this proposal. So in protest, the third estate walked out of the general estates meeting. Then on 20th June 1789, the members of the third estate, considering themselves to be representatives of the people, they formed a national assembly. They gathered at the indoor tennis court in Versailles, and they swore not to disperse as an assembly until they had drafted a constitution for France, which would limit the powers of the monarch. This assembly, the National Assembly, was led especially by 2 people. One was Mirabeau, who was a part of the second estate, he was a nobleman, and Abbé Sieyès, who had been a priest, and he belonged to the second estate. But these people did not believe in the idea of privilege by birth. And this is the end of this video. Looking forward to seeing you for the next video. Thank you.